Good evening. Welcome to Oconee County Board of Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. After a moment of silence, we're going to ask Holly to lead us in the pledge. Please stand. Our first item of business will be to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda submitted.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item is statements and remarks from citizens. This is for anything not on our agenda tonight.
Good evening, David Clemenson, Oconee. I want to thank Oconee County for hosting a good event on Saturday. At our Oconee Library, Watkinsville branch, November 4th was a children's story time. My wife and children love children's story time. They attend most of them, including the bilingual story time. My wife is Latina and our children are biracial. Saturday's story time was led by the branch manager, James Mitchell, and it was all Christmas. James read 2 books about the nativity story, about the birth of Jesus Christ, and glory to God in the highest. Then there were crafts of baby Jesus and coloring Happy Birthday Jesus. The children's story time was a big success. We all know about the criticism that this library sustained for hosting a drag queen homosexual children's story time in June. And critics might say that this Christmas reading was poorly timed, being on a football game day in November. But it was 5 hours before kickoff, and the library won't be open during the month of December due to the move to Wire Park. We have to give compliments where they are due and express gratitude for the Oconee Library and specifically the branch manager. Also, I want to recognize Miss Donna at the Bogart Library. She always does excellent work as the children's librarian. My wife and children love her story times too. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Any other citizens' remarks? Any remarks from commissioners? You want to announce November 15th will be our final town hall meeting for 2023. We'll be in this room here at 6 p.m. We'll talk a little bit more about the homestead exemptions that'll be coming up for a vote by the citizens on the ballots next spring. It's also citizens' opportunities to meet with the commissioners and talk about anything that is on your mind. Sunday, November 5th, was Retired Educators Day. We had a little ceremony here last week, and it was really good to see some of the teachers from back in the day when some of us were still in high school. Miss Mary Boswell, Ida Jenkins, who used to be Miss Scotland, was there. Jackie Thomason, Miss Bowles, and Miss Patricia Huff. So it was great seeing them. One of my favorite events that I get to do every year. The next item will be to approve the minutes. This will be from October 3rd and October 31st.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
We have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank
Thank you. Motion carries. Now we'll move into our hearing actions and zoning matters. The first item is rezone request P23-0164. This is William C. Ross. This is a change in conditions for rezone case number 1433. 3.04 acres located at 1071 Chestnut Glen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Again, this is P23-0164, William C. Ross, owner. This is located in Chestnut Glen, parcel C02Y006 and C02Y0018A. It's currently zoned AR in the suburban neighborhood character area. And they're requesting a rezone modification to combine the amenity lot, which was required with the original rezone. They want to add it to the adjacent residential lot. Staff recommends conditional approval with our one condition. Planning Commission also recommends approval. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner. Mr. Ross, you want to say anything?
Good evening, Bill Ross, 1071 Chestnut Glen. What seemed to be a good idea 23 years ago when I developed this small subdivision was to cut out this parcel from my property, my lot, to make an amenity parcel for the neighborhood. It's not such a great idea today. The homeowner association, after all these years, we've never used it as it was going to be used, and they've asked me to recombine it with my property. We're having to insure it right now, and that was one of the reasons, but it just wasn't being used. So we're asking for a simple recombination. Questions?
Does anyone else wish to speak for the rezone? Does anyone wish to speak against? With that, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Any questions from commissioners on this? Yes. We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve rezone P 23-0164 William C. Ross, changing condition for rezone case number 1433, 3.04 acres, 1071 Chestnut Glen residential with one condition.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second to approve rezone request P 23-0164 with one condition. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item is rezone request P 23-0181 Bessie Turnbull. This is rezone from AG to AR's 10.37 acres located at 1160 Maxey Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Again, this is P 23-0181 Bessie Turnbull. This is parcel A 05021B and A 05021BA located on Maxey Road and Berta Drive. It's currently zoned AG in the Country Estates character area. And the request is to rezone the property from AG to AR in order to develop a 4-lot residential subdivision. This is the concept plan that you have in your application package, identifying the 4 lots. A slightly larger version. Representative architectural photos. And staff recommends conditional approval with our 3 standard conditions. The Planning Commission also recommended approval with the same conditions. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner. Does anyone wish to speak for the rezone? Does anyone wish to speak against? That will go ahead and close public comments. Any questions from commissioners? We'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve a rezone P 23-0181 Bessie Turnbull, to rezone from AG to AR, the 10.37 acres located 1160 Maxey Road with the 3 conditions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve rezone request P 23-0181 with 3 conditions. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item is rezone P 23-0186. It's Marsha D. Rogers and Melissa Finnerty. This is a change in conditions for rezone case 2841. It's 2.06 acres located at Hog Mountain Road. There's also a variance request number P 23-0187 for the same location.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Again, this is rezone P 23-0186 and variance P 23-0187. Marsha Rogers and Melissa Finnerty owners. This is the aerial photo of the existing property. It's parcel A 02025B. It's currently zoned OIP in the suburban neighborhood character area. And the request is to rezone the property from OIP to OIP with a modified conditions, modifying the concept plan from the original rezone and the use. The variance request is allow parking in excess of the 110% of the minimum parking spaces allowed by the ordinance, going from 31 that's allowed to 41 as requested by the applicant. This is the concept plan that you have in your application packets, slightly larger version. This is the previous rezone 2841, showing their concept plan, which, just for discussion, this is the location of the proposed buildings in the current rezone, showing the septic field in the front along Highway 53 and the parking to the rear and the stormwater to the rear. The previous, or the current application is parking in the front with a building and stormwater to the rear and septic to the side. These are the architectural representative photos. Again, this is the variance concept plan, the same concept plan for the rezone. And staff recommends conditional approval of the rezone with, I believe, 6 conditions. So our 3 standard conditions, number 4, development design and structures shall conform to the standards approved in association with the rezoning case number 2841, which was approved in 2003, and with the associated development intent with regards to site design and architecture. Specifically, these standards include the location of parking primarily to the rear of the proposed structures and out of view, architectural design compatible with residential architecture in the vicinity, and landscaping that provides visual buffering and beautification along Hog Mountain Road frontage. The building facade materials should be primarily brick, stucco, or masonry products with design detailing that maintains a residential feel and blends in with the surrounding homes of the area. This condition shall not construe approval of any standard that is not in conformity with UDC. Number 5, all dumpsters and waste container areas shall be in enclosed structure away from the public view. And number 6, any required stormwater detention facilities shall be located to the rear of the property and out of public view. The Planning Commission recommended approval with those same conditions. The variance report, we believe staff does believe meets all necessary conditions to grant the special exception variance, with 2 conditions. Our 1 standard condition, and number 2, all the parking in excess of the required minimum number of spaces shall be constructed of pervious pavement, as suggested in their application as well. And we will need to vote on them separately. Thank you.
And we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Justin Greer, Pittman Greer Engineering, 1050 Barber Creek Drive, Building 400. The applicants have owned the property since 2002, and they currently own the property that surrounds the subject tract to the east and to the south. The property was zoned A1 to OIP in January of 2003. And like Guy said, in that original plan, it had 2 7,000 square foot buildings with access to the west and parking to the rear. In that original narrative, the property was specifically zoned as general office for use as an applicant's development business. The current plan proposes a single business up to 9,000 square feet to be used as medical office. We've shown the entrance to the east of the property to meet current GDOT separation requirements with the entrance of Vintage Oak Farms. The perimeter buffers are greater under the current UDC than the old county regs in 2003, going from 10 feet to 25 feet. And I did want to address that one condition, number 4. And we have a little bit of concern with that, specifically the parking primarily to the rear of the building. We feel that the concept plan presented before you tonight is a better layout than that 2003 version in light of a couple things. The development that has occurred on those surrounding properties since 2003 of Grace Baptist Church and Vintage Oak Farms, both were completed after 2003, and neither of those have parking that are primarily to the rear of the buildings. We also feel that pushing a building up to the street is an aesthetic that is typically observed in an urban setting and often done for pedestrian accessibility. The original rezone plan provided for 57 parking spaces, and we are showing 41. That's about 28% less on the plan. We also feel, as that number 4 condition, that the styles and preferences in architecture have changed tremendously since 2003. And the examples we're providing as representative architecture meet a more modern farmhouse fashion, kind of what's in style right now. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak for the rezone or the variance? Anyone wish to speak against? That will go ahead and close public comment. Open up to any questions, commissioners?
Got one, Guy, can you address that condition number 4, what he had mentioned? And, just kind of explain your position
Sure,
on that.
yeah, can you give me that one back? So, no, that's, yeah, I'll go back to the concept plan. So along 53, at the time of this rezone, I think they were thinking of the septic being in the front yard between 53 and the buildings, providing a landscaped area that would kind of protect the view shed along 53, because the majority of it is a agricultural type view. And so having buildings right up on the road or having parking right on the road is probably not the best thing. So we're not necessarily saying move the building to the road. We're saying provide your septic area preferably in that location as was previously proposed, so that you have visual separation from the road and all you're going to see is the structure itself, which it is more of a farmhouse look, a modern day farmhouse look, and I don't think staff has any issue with the architecture being proposed in the application. Just the location of it would be preferable, we believe, slightly further back. And then providing the parking in the back would and to the side would provide some shielding of the parking in that same view area. And certainly the stormwater obviously needs to go. I believe that's where it is best fits with topo anyway. The church has parking in the front that I think has probably been there for quite some time. This parking is intermittent parking. It is gravel. And it is kind of narrow at the front. What is being proposed on the current concept plan obviously would take up a good bit of that front yard area. So we're just trying to protect that view shed along 53 and kind of stay in keeping with the original intent of that rezone.
So has anybody investigated if the septic will go where they're showing it is now?
Yeah, the staff is not, I don't know.
Yes, sir.
So it being medical, the septic field's gonna be a little larger and it's gonna be hard to make it fit and then have a building and parking and then a pond and then 15 more foot of buffer than was required in 03. So septic field's larger than 03. Stormwater requirements are more than 03 and buffers are more than 03. So I'm boxed in tremendously. And I get what Guy's saying about having that view shed up front. That project will not be that way. If we have to move the building to the front, it's going to be on the street. So I want to make clear that what we'll have to do to make it fit in a viable project, we can't have green space up front and it won't work. So I'm gonna have to push that building up there and create room because regs are different and areas needed are different. So man, we can do that. It's just gonna be up on the road.
Mm-hmm. I guess the septic is one of my main concerns is if it would, be functional with the old location. And we really don't know the answer to that at this point, sounds like.
Well, only comment I have, of course, I can't do anything about something that's happened in the past because I don't have any control over it. If I did, I'd probably still be A1 today. Okay. I mean, when I first saw this, I said, in the middle of the country, and I always heard spot zoning. And I understand the ag, it's not being used for agriculture, but it's been zoned A1. And I do have a concern, and I understand about the septic field, Justin, but to preserve the, that being an agricultural area out there, to have parking lot or much less, either a building, either one. Yes, sir. I would just soon have neither one. So, I mean, if what we're talking about, this view shed, I don't want to see anything. That's my preference.
Understood.
So,
Can I give you an idea of distances? So if you think about the 7853 node, that commercial node, this project is closer to that node than the high school is to Butler's Crossing. So the distance we're talking about as far as commercial nodes, it really isn't in the country. I know what I see, but from a planning.
I said, I have no control over what happened in the past. I have control over what, I have a vote going forward.
Absolutely.
So you better be glad it's OIP tonight already. Because I would make a motion to send it back to A1 myself.
Any other questions?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, and what Commissioner Thomas brings up, I mean, how do we, work that out? I mean, we don't know where the septic field is going to end up. I mean, is this something that we just have to trust the developer and the staff to do what's right?
I'd say they work through what they can.
I say that, I don't know, to answer your question, I don't know if the soils are good. If the soils are good, we'll do our best. I feel like to make it work, and I don't know, I'm just saying from a design standpoint, do it every day. I feel like I'm gonna have to push the building closer to the road than what that original plan was, and we'll do our best to make it what the original zoning intent was if we, that's the.
It'd be similar to most of our rezones. Once the engineering comes in, they may, guy has, some things where he can try to deal with that. The main thing you're saying is that the parking will be in the back. In order to change that, that would have to come back to the commission. So.
Right, yeah, that's correct, but I think the best way would be to adopt it with that condition, and then we work through it with the developer to make sure that intent is met. And so I think if you move forward with the vote to approve with that condition, we'll try to work with them on how we make that site work and meet the intent of that previous ordinance or previous rezone.
So let me ask you one question then we're changing the concept plan. I mean, there's a concept plan on record right now. Is that correct? Yes. So what we're doing is change that concept.
That's correct. The request was to change that and slightly change that plan and the use, right? From an office really to a medical office. But the concept plan is what really triggered the change. And those previous conditions are what we're trying to preserve even in this modification. So the use is changing, and then their request was to change the site plan or the concept plan. We're saying, let's try to meet the intent of that previous rezone as best we can with that. And that being, a distance from the right of way that was similar, maybe it's not exact, and we would have to look at that and determine where that septic can go and how the parking would fit to the site and the stormwater. It is a little tight, but the other thing is the ordinance does allow for stormwater to be offsite. And so whether that's an option or not for this project or not, I don't know, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have that pond wholly or completely on that property. So, and they own the property around it. So there may be other ways that we can work with them from a code standpoint on that.
Mr. Greer had mentioned that some of the other things had changed since 2003, such as the buffer and thing. Could you speak to that? I mean, is that being punitive to?
They've increased, they have, but it's been quite some time that, that has increased from 06 when the UDC was adopted. So the change was closer to the 03 rezone than it is to this request.
So if we approve the condition, then we find out that it won't perk, then
In that location, that's right. Yeah, then obviously there's an option to come back and request that change again, and they'll have justification for that.
thank you.
Yes.
There are no other questions. We'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve rezone P 230186 with the conditions as presented. And then I would say, just as a general comment, that the septic does need to be worked out. And as you mentioned earlier, because that's really not that's a totally different group that we deal with on the septic. It's not a county function. So, it's kind of outside our purview anyway.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve rezone request P 23-0186 with 6 conditions as presented. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carried. Next item is the variance request.
I make a motion to approve the variance request P 230187 with the conditions as stated.
We have a motion and a second to approve variance request P 23-0187 with 2 conditions. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion. Next item is ratification of Matthias Construction as general contractor for the courthouse elevator project. Justin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is part of the elevator project at the courthouse we discussed. This is a case where the existing fiscal ordinance sort of creates a box that is not advantageous to the county. This is something that we're going to address probably in the next 6 months or so about amending as far as procurement of service contracts versus just commodities. In this case, if you recall, we awarded TK Elevator a contract to do most of the work on the courthouse elevators, but there was some additional ancillary work that needed to occur, and the commission approved a budget not to exceed $260,000. Our facilities manager went and solicited a general contractor to coordinate the trades, mechanical, low voltage, telecommunication, electrical. That would be comprise the ancillary portions of it. The total would exceed $20,000, which was our bid limit. We're running into issues with the markets and have for several years that we just cannot get contractors. We're in essence burning them out, coming out to view things and then come back later and offer bids. This is something that's a unique case with the courthouse project. I happen to work in an operational building. We're recommending moving forward. I discussed this with Melissa as far as the best course of action to go forward. This is under budget overall, but it exceeds the $20,000. And so I instructed the facilities manager to move forward with a contract pending the board ratifying essentially my decision. The alternative would be to go ahead and bid the project out. Just a high degree of variability and an unlikelihood of getting a better price. I'm recommending against it, but that is the alternative option.
Any questions from commissioners on this? Any public comment? That will entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the ratification of the Mathis Corporation as general contractor for courthouse elevator project.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item is discuss and consider the FY 23 year-end budget amendments. Melissa?
Thank you very much. Good evening. I am here to present year-end budget amendments for fiscal year ending 2023 as of June 30th. And this will allow us to complete our financial statements that are required to be issued and audited each fiscal year. These amendments occur with your authorization to increase or decrease the budget and as well as to transfer. So departments throughout the year are able to move funds as needed within operations and maintenance functions, but not to increase or decrease personnel or capital items. So I'm here this evening to provide you with a description of what these amendments are and request your approval for those. Beginning with the general fund, these amendments would amend revenues and expenditures, increasing each of them. Requesting to increase revenues $6,205,416. This allows us to allocate the final round of ARP funds into revenue at $4.8 million. Increase the budget for local option sales tax, $1,096,000. And also recognizes some smaller revenues, of which include interest at $145,000 and sale of assets at $103,000 and some other license and permits fees. With these revenues, we would like to reflect in the general fund an increase of expenditures at $6,207,416. And with those funds, that would increase the coroner's professional services budget $3,785 and allow a transfer into capital assigned fund balance in the amount of $9,778,225. The following items are decreases in expenditures that would allow that transfer for items that were budgeted, but projects that were completed for less than budget or budgets that weren't used in the fiscal year. And those include public works, infrastructure, professional services, and maintenance projects, decreasing $1,560,000. Decreasing a solid waste subsidy from the general fund by $143,000. Decreasing a transfer to capital as part of the administrative building project, $986,637. Decreasing the subsidy needed for E911 from the general fund by $200,000. Decreasing debt service needed $584,957 related to Costco debt services, since the amortization on that is not fixed. We kind of estimate what those are each year and more or less than budgeted in the general fund, as well as reducing a transfer that was planned for parks for the Heritage Park project. Those funds are in the capital fund as of FY23 year end, already in assigned fund balance. Transfers for the general fund would shift expenditures either in or out of personnel or capital or to other departments. So it wouldn't increase the overall budget. And we proposed that we use retiree insurance budget to cover administration, probate, and emergency management personnel costs of $18,066. Using commission personnel to assist in covering administration insurance costs at $9,350. And to reconcile the public defender budget between personnel and professional services, $976. That covers the general fund. Other funds outside of that consist of funds where we would receive revenue and might be required to spend it in the same fiscal year, while not knowing what we were going to receive in advance and being able to budget for it. So items such as special revenue donations, special tax funds, and grants. So we have 4 items we request budget amendment on in other funds, including confiscated assets, increasing the expenditure by $2,050 and using fund balance for operations. Special revenue donations for disc golf of $206 using fund balance. Fire station administration account, recognizing donations in excess of budget of $44,400 and expenditures of $114,650, covering the appreciation dinner and also a transfer into special revenue. And fire station number 7, increasing donations and using those for meals and supplies for the station and a remodeling. It's revenue of $9,000 and expenditures of $30,100. A transfer again for the senior center wouldn't change the overall budget, but moving funds from personnel and capital to cover operations and maintenance, $59,500. And then the following list is revenue neutral items, meaning we're increasing revenues and increasing expenditures by the same amounts. This includes conservation use fees of $1,425, donations reserved for Touch a Truck at $216, scholarships funded and paid out for junior instructional basketball of $95, public safety transfer in from confiscated assets used for operations and maintenance, $4,000. Transferring into fire administration from the station account and using funds for operations and maintenance of the stations, $70,750. Station number 7, general fund support and completion of a pumper truck purchase, it's $10,405. Various station donations that are used towards meals and supplies for that station, $5,975. Jail management fees and operation maintenance for inmates at $50,000. In E911, I mentioned that we were able to reduce that subsidy from the general fund by $200,000 and offsetting that with an increase in revenue of $73,700 for a net decrease in budget of $126,300. Allocation of ARP funds in the grant fund at $4,124,466. Recognizing grant revenue for a special task force and personnel costs of $692. Additional taxes collected and then the required distributions relating to those taxes. Hotel sales tax is $35,200. SPOST is $2,001,700 and T-SPOST is $345,500. Completing the senior center expansion with grant funds of $15,000. And then the other items that were already mentioned into the general fund, transfers that occurred. This includes the capital transfer, budget amendment of $9,778,225 into assigned fund balance for capital projects. Also, the administrative building reduction of $986,637 and Heritage Park for $100,000. And let's see, we have special facilities, sanitation, we reduced that subsidy, also increasing revenue of $52,926 for a net change decreasing $90,074. And for special facilities at the Civic Center, increasing revenue and using personnel and equipment and the revenues towards additional depreciation of a total of $33,300. So that concludes all the items that would increase or decrease budget line items. And then as a final kind of cleanup task, I've requested additional approvals of multi-year project components. We don't need a budget amendment in FY23 for these items, but these items did continue into FY24. So we would like to be able to use the funds that were received. So for the general fund, we'd like to match the fireworks tax grant of $1,812 and to be able to spend those grant funds in FY24. In the grant fund would need an amendment of $18,117. Also in the general fund, received insurance proceeds in FY23. We'd like to use those proceeds in 24 for a sheriff's office vehicle. And then the other items are in the capital fund. Their assigned fund balance. We would just like to be able to move forward in FY24 with Snows Mill and Rocky Branch Roundabout and Ray's Church and Malcolm Bridge Roundabout with acquisition services at $18,750, $19,250 respectively. And the Malcolm Bridge R-Cut project completion to wrap up some engineering costs of $12,695. So those multi-year approval items total $109,179, and those would be budget amendments just for the life of the project up to that amount as needed until completion. So that's a lot of information, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to ask questions since I am asking for your consideration this evening so that we can move forward with the financial statements. So I'd like to request your consideration of approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from Melissa on this?
Is the ARP funds, are they about over with now?
Yes, this FY23 completes the recognition of revenue and the use of those funds.
So we won't see that anymore.
Well, not unless we get more.
Any other questions? Thank you, Melissa. Do we have any public comment on this item? With that, we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the FY 23 year budget amendments as submitted.
Second.
Yeah, motion and second, all in favor? Thank you, motion carries. Does any commissioner wish any item to be removed from consent? Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, motion carries. We do have need of an quick executive session discussion. Personnel.
Say personnel.
Personnel.
Make a motion, we go in executive session, discuss personnel matters.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We need a motion to go back in regular session. Second.
Second.
We have a motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
So after discussions with the magistrate court, clerk of court, district attorney, and CRSA probation, I'd like to recommend that we appoint Jason Slider as the prosecutor for the Oconee County Magistrate Court. Mr. Slider will assume prosecution of the 5 misdemeanors noted in the official code of Georgia 1510-260, effective with the December 2023 magistrate calendar. We will also continue with the prosecution of county ordinances. Appreciate the support of all the stakeholders in this to come up with a win-win situation for our citizens. With that, my recommendation is appoint Jason Slider as the Oconee County Magistrate Court prosecutor.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. With that, Commissioner,
Motion adjourned?
we are adjourned.